The snow had crusted hard overnight, a brittle skin across the land that cracked under the weight of footsteps. It was the kind of cold that burned before it numbed, that silenced birds and kept breath close to the mouth. Wind moved like a slow knife across the plains, dragging smoke from chimneys that had not burned in hours. Miriam stood on the porch, the hem of her skirt frozen stiff. Her boots were thin, soles separating near the toe, but she stood still, as if motion might shatter her. Snow clung to her lashes. Beside her, her two boys leaned into her legs for warmth, silent, red-cheeked, their eyes on the dark windows of the house. There was no light inside. The oil had run out 4 nights ago. Wood stacked on the porch had turned to nothing but splinters.
She had burned the last chair the day before, then the side table.
Now only the bed remained, and she had promised the boys they would not burn that. Not yet. The older boy, Caleb, shifted.
His lips were cracked, and he sucked the corner of his mouth, as if trying to taste what little was left of his patience.
"Ma," he whispered, his voice already hoarse. "Are they coming?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the tree line beyond the empty field, where the road should have wound its way back from town. It hadn't been traveled in days. Snow had swallowed the ruts, and no wagon had dared come through since the storm rolled in. "Ma?" The younger one, Eli, said, quieter.
She pressed her hand against their heads, her fingers raw beneath the knit gloves.
She cowed and say what she feared more, that no one would come, or that someone might. Inside, the silence waited like a predator. Her husband's body lay in the back room, wrapped in canvas and rope, the air around it brittle with cold. She had sent Caleb running for help the morning after, but no one followed him back. He had returned alone, teeth chattering, saying the town was empty, shut tight, doors barred, afraid of the sickness. Now they waited. Snow thickened on the porch rail, weighing it down until it sagged. Crows gathered in the cottonwoods, black specks against the white, watching. One boy coughed, a low dry rasp. The world gave nothing back. Miriam stepped down from the porch and walked toward the shed, boots crunching with each step. The door stuck in the drift, and she forced it open with her shoulder.
Inside was dark, rank with old hay and the sharp scent of rust.
Her husband's tools hung where he had left them, except the axe. That was gone. She reached for the spade, knowing it was useless. Still she gripped it, held it like it might make her feel something other than the rising flood of helplessness.
When she turned back, her boys were watching her. Caleb, taller now than she remembered, squared his shoulders like a man. Eli had his hands tucked into his sleeves, trembling.
"Inside," she said. But no. They went without arguing, crunching through the snow as the sky turned the color of iron. She followed, the spade still in her hand, and closed the door behind them. Inside, breath fogged the air. She set the spade near the hearth, then took the coat from her shoulders and wrapped it around Eli. Caleb sat close to the hearth, arms crossed. His eyes were glassy with cold and defiance. "We could walk," he said. "We could go back to town. It's 12 miles. I can do 12 miles. Not in this cold. Not without food." Silence. The wind moaned against the house like it was searching for a crack to get in. Miriam reached for the small tin near the stove. One biscuit. Stale hard. She broke it into 3 pieces and gave the boys their share without a word. When she chewed hers, it made her gums bleed. "Tomorrow," she said finally. "If no one comes by tomorrow, we'll go."
"I'll go with you," Caleb said.
"No, you can't walk it alone. I've done worse." He didn't argue after that. The cold had made them old in different ways. Later that night, when the boys had fallen into uneasy sleep beneath the quilts, Miriam sat near the hearth and watched the spade. Her hands were numb.
She no longer felt her feet.
She thought of the sound her husband made when he died, like a tree snapping in the wind. He hadn't looked at her in the end, just stared through the ceiling, teeth clenched tight. She had pressed a cloth to his brow, knowing it was useless. When he stopped breathing, she didn't cry. She cowered. Now the wind cried for her, shrieked through the boards, clawed at the eave. Somewhere, an animal howled in the distance, but it could have been her own voice, swallowed by the night. By morning, the wind had died, but the cold had deepened. A sky of dull pewter hung low over the plains, as if even the sun had given up.
Miriam rose before the boys stirred, her limbs heavy and stiff.
I sliced the inside of the windows, curled like frost flowers across the glass. She boiled what little snow she could chip from the bucket outside. It took nearly an hour. The stove hissed and spat, but no real warmth came from it. The boys drank in silence, their hands cupped around tin mugs, eyes dull with fatigue. Eli had begun to shiver in his sleep. Caleb's cough had deepened. It had to be today.
Miriam packed slowly, knowing what she could not carry was most of what they needed.
2 biscuits, a flask of melted snow, a small knife.
She wrapped her shawl tighter, pinned it beneath her coat, and tucked the last letter from her sister into her boot.
It was from nearly a year ago, just news of a baby born, and the new corn prices, but it was the only voice outside this cabin she still had. She told Caleb to keep the door barred, told him not to light anything unless he had to, told him she'd be back before dark, though she knew that was a lie. Then she stepped outside. The cold hit like a blow.
Snow stretched in every direction, clean and unbroken.
The road was only a memory beneath the white, but she followed it, each step a guess. Her breath was a ghost that followed her, quick and shallow. She didn't look back.
By midday her legs ached, and her toes were numb.
Her lips cracked when she tried to breathe through her mouth.
The flask had frozen.
Still, she walked. What choice did she have? No one was coming. No one had ever come. Out here, the land didn't care if you prayed or screamed.
Just before the ridge, where the fence posts leaned like tired men, she saw something move.
A figure on horseback, dark against the snow. She froze.
Her heart slammed in her chest, not in fear, not at first, but at the wild hope of it.
Then came the fear. The rider drew closer. He wore a long coat, dusted white at the shoulders, and a scarf pulled high across his mouth. His hat was low over his eyes.
The horse moved, slow but steady, steam rising from its nostrils.
The man pulled the reins as he neared, eyeing her. She didn't speak, couldn't. He dismounted in one fluid motion. Boots hit the snow with a soft thud. "You all right, Mum?" His voice was rough, not unkind. She hesitated, then nodded. Cabins back that way, 2 children inside. He glanced past her, toward the tree line. "You walk all this way?" She nodded again.
Jesus, he muttered, mostly to himself. Then, louder names Wit.
"Whit Ransom. You from the Lark Place?" She didn't answer.
Didn't trust her voice. He looked at her face a moment longer, then said, "Let's get you on the horse."
"I've got a wagon not far behind." "Well, get your boys." She hesitated, unsure what trust was worth any more. But her legs were shaking. Her lips wouldn't stop trembling. He must be seeing the doubt on her face. "Aye, auntie, the kind you gotta worry over."
Just passing through, but I heard about the sickness.
Figured someone might need help. She stepped forward, her knees nearly buckling. He caught her elbow and steadied her. His hand was bare. He must be given his gloves to someone else. His skin was red and cracked. Without another word, he helped her onto the horse. His grip was strong but careful, like he was used to helping things that might break. They rode back in silence. When they reached the cabin, Caleb met them at the door, holding the rusted knife shed left behind. His face was pale with fear and fever. Eli sat behind him, eyes wide and wet.
"It's all right," Miriam said, sliding down from the horse.
"H.E.S. here to help." Whit nodded once, then stepped back. "He'll get the wagon. You'll want the boys warm before we move. She looked at him for the first time.
Really looked.
His eyes were green, not bright, but deep, the color of moss under stone. There was a scar near his jaw, half hidden by his scarf. He looked tired, but not unkind.
Inside, she warmed the boys with what was left of the blankets.
Fed them the last biscuit. We'd returned with the wagon, 2 horses hitched to a rickety frame lined with furs and canvas. You got somewhere to take us? She asked. There's a church house 15 miles south, he said. Used to be a mission. Folks been bringing supplies. She looked back at the cabin, at the door she had nailed shut, at the room that still held her husband. We can't leave him, she said. Whit didn't blink. He'll help you dig. The wind picked up again, howling across the flat, but Miriam didn't flinch. Not this time. This road keeps going. Subscribe and follow it. The ground was hard as stone, the shovel clanging off frost-bitten dirt like it struck iron. Whit worked with quiet focus, breath steaming, muscles tight beneath his coat. Miriam stood a few feet away, wrapped in the boy's quilt, holding Eli close. Caleb stayed near the tree line, watching with the wary stillness of someone who had seen too much too young. They didn't speak. Not when the earth gave way, not when the hole was finally wide enough, not even when Whit carried the body from the back room, wrapped in canvas, and lowered it into the ground. Miriam had no words left, no prayers, just the ache in her throat and the silence of the land, heavy as judgment. She pressed a flat stone into the frozen soil once it was done. No name, no date, just something to mark he had been there, that she hadn't left him to the wolves. By dusk, the wagon was ready. Whit tied down the canvas tight, his hands moving with practiced care. The boys sat close together on the bench, heads tipped together, Eli half asleep already.
Miriam climbed up last, moving slowly, every part of her sore and stiff.
We glanced over. They'll sleep most the way. She nodded. He'll stay awake. The horses started forward, hooves muffled in the snow. The road wound through open plains and sparse woods. Everything ghosted in white and gray, the kind of world where time felt like it had stopped breathing. They didn't talk for miles.
But there was something about the quiet with Whit that didn't press on her chest the way other silences had.
It was heavy, just there, like snow falling on branches. Eventually, he said, You from back east? She nodded. Illinois. Small farm. What brought you this far out? My husband wanted land. He said they were giving it away out here. Government deal. Just had to last 5 years. Whit snorted, low and dry. That sounds about right. She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased a little. She turned toward him, saw the side of his face in the fading light. The scar was clearer now, pale against his cheek. It looked old. What about you? She asked. You always riding into people's lives like this? He shrugged. I was headed to Cheyenne. Friend of mine's got a place near there. Heard about a sick family out by the Lark Road and figured it'd check. Why? Woodland's it right to pass by. The answer was simple. Not proud. Not offered with any weight. Just true. They rode until the moon rose. The road dipped and climbed, the horses sure-footed in the snow. Somewhere behind them, the wind swept over the grave, scattering the fresh dirt until it was just another mound among many. At the mission house, lights glowed warm through the windows. Smoke curled from the chimney, thick and welcoming. A dog barked once, then stopped. Someone stepped out onto the porch, lantern raised. Whit waved once, and the figure disappeared inside. You'll be safe here, he said, pulling the reins. They've got supplies. Folks come from all over to help. Miriam didn't move. Her hands were frozen into fists on her lap. I'm not leaving them here, she said. You won't have to. They've got bunks, food. You can stay as long as you need. And you? He looked down at his gloves, then back at her. I was just passing through. She didn't say anything, just climbed down from the wagon and helped the boys inside. Warmth hit like a flood. The room smelled of bread and cedar smoke. An older woman with sharp eyes and a soft voice took the boys' coats, lead them toward the fire. Eli didn't look back. Caleb did. Miriam stood near the doorway, unsure. Whit lingered outside, rain still in his hands. Snow began to fall again, soft and slow, each flake bright in the lantern light. She stepped out to him, her boots crunching the fresh dusting. "You should come inside," she said. "You'll sleep in the barn." "You don't have to." He looked at her then, truly looked, and something passed between them. Not desire, not anything that could be rushed, just recognition of grief, of weariness, of having survived things that didn't want them to. "He'll come in," he said finally. And for the first time in days, Miriam let herself breathe. The fire crackled low in the hearth, shadows dancing along the stone walls. Someone had given the boys a wool blanket and a slice of cornbread, and now they lay curled together on a narrow bunk, their breathing slow and even. Miriam sat nearby, her hands resting in her lap, thumbs moving in small circles, over and over. Whit sat across the room, one leg stretched out, boot beside the coals. He hadn't removed his coat yet, though the room was warm. His eyes were on the fire, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The mission house lost much a single room for the guests, a kitchen off to one side, and a loft above for the caretaker, but it was clean, dry, and carried the smell of recent prayer. Crosses carved by hand hung on the walls. A line of snow-damp coats dripped by the door. "Was it bad where you were?" she asked, voice low. He blinked, slow as if pulled from something far away. "Nebraska plains. Lost my brother to fever last year. Neighbor's girl went next. Some winters just take what they want." Miriam nodded. She understood now that the world didn't care what you love. It would take it all the same. "You've been alone since?" "Mostly," he said. "Had work in Kansas for a while. Tried to settle near Dodge. Didn't stick. I don't seem to hold places the way I ought to." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You don't talk like a man from Dodge." Whit gave a ghost of a smile. "I was raised with books. My mother thought I'd be a preacher. What happened? I liked horses more than sermons." A silence settled, not uncomfortable, just quiet. Miriam looked at her boys. His mouth hung open in sleep. Caleb's hand twitched now and then, fingers curled into a fist. She folded her arms tighter across her chest. "They haven't eaten properly in days. I burned the last of our furniture, just to keep the air from freezing." "I know," he said. She looked up. "How?" "You had that look." He gestured gently. "Folks who've crossed the line between worry and desperation. You can see it in their hands, around their mouths, in the way they don't ask for help, even when they should." Miriam exhaled, sharpened, shaky. "We waited so long. I thought maybe someone would come, but there was nothing. Just snow and silence. I'm sorry. That was all. No sermon, no suggestion that things would get better. Just truth." The wind picked up again outside, howling against the wood like a child denied entry. Whit stood and walked to the stove, took a kettle from the shelf and filled it from the barrel near the hearth. "He'll make coffee," he said. "That is, if you're the kind who still wants to feel something in the morning." She laughed. It surprised her. The sound came up dry and low, like it had been buried for years. Whit didn't smile, but his eyes softened. They drank quietly, sitting near the fire. The coffee was bitter, but hot. She wrapped her hands around the tin cup, letting it warm her fingers. Outside, snow whispered against the windows. Somewhere nearby, a horse stomped in the barn. "I keep thinking about the bed," she said, after a while. "How we saved it, all through the cold. As if it meant something. As if keeping one thing upright would keep the rest from falling apart." Whit stared into the fire. "Sometimes it's not about what it's worth. It's about what it reminds you of." She looked down at her cup. It reminded me of when he built it. First winter, he carved our initials into the post. Do you still love him? He asked gently. She was quiet. The fire popped, a spark leaping toward the stone. I loved what I thought he could be, she said. But in the end, I think he was always just tired. And I grew tired trying to carry him. Whit didn't speak. She glanced at him. Is that cruel to say? No, he said. Just honest. The fire burned low. The boy slept. And in the silence, something fragile and unfamiliar began to take shape. Not comfort. Not yet. But the faint shape of it. I don't know what comes next, she said. Me neither, he replied. They sat a while longer, until the coffee cooled and the room went still. The storm outside had quieted, its rage spent. When she finally stood, legs aching, she looked at him and said, Stay, at least for a few days, until I figure out what to do. He didn't nod, didn't smile, just said, all right, and somehow that was enough. Morning came soft and blue through the window panes, the light pale and cautious, as if unsure it was welcome. Miriam woke with her feet tucked beneath her skirt, the warmth of the fire long gone. She stretched, slow and stiff, and checked the boy's Eli was still curled up tight, but Caleb had shifted closer to the wall, one arm thrown across his chest like a shield. Whit was already up. She heard the barn door creak open a minute before the smell of hay and horse followed. He came in with snow on his collar and the ropes slung over one shoulder, shaking out his coat by the doorway. Woodpile's decent, he said. And they've got hens out back. You'll eat better here. Miriam nodded. Well, help with chores. You don't owe anyone anything. She raised her eyebrows at that. I don't intend to sit on my hands, Mr. Ransom. He cracked a dry smile. Didn't figure you would. Later, they worked side by side behind the mission house. The snow had softened just enough to break through with a shovel, and she helped clear paths to the barn and privy while he split logs. Her arms ached after only a few swings, but she kept on. Sweat pooled under her collar despite the cold, and each breath stung her lungs, but it felt good. Honest. The woman who ran the mission, Sister Amelia, offered them soup and bread for the midday meal. She had a lined face and coal-used hands, but a voice like linen soft, folded, never raised. Caleb kept his eyes down while they ate, but Eli chatted between mouthfuls, his color returning, his laugh coming back in bursts like birds startled into the air. Watching them, Miriam's throat thickened. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself together. That evening, which showed the boys how to mend a broken harness, hands moving slow so they could follow. He didn't speak much, only when needed, but Caleb watched him close, eyes narrow with concentration, as if trying to understand not just what he did but why. Miriam sat nearby, mending a sleeve. Thread bit into her fingers, but she welcomed the sting. It reminded her she was still here, still useful. We looked up once and caught her watching. She didn't look away. Neither did he. That night, when the boys were asleep and the fire burned low again, he asked, You think you'll stay? She stared into the flames, the orange light flickering across the worn floor. I don't know, she said. The cabin's ours. But after what happened, you're not wrong to leave it behind. I'm not sure I'm leaving it behind. It may have already left us. He nodded, like he understood something she hadn't quite said. Do you have a place to go? She asked. He shifted in his chair, one arm across the back, fingers tapping idly against the wood. Not really. Thought I did once, but turns out it wasn't waiting for me. What happened? Went off to fight when I was 17. Came back at 20 and found my folks gone. Died in a fire. House nothing but a black patch in the grass. She flinched at that. I'm sorry. He shrugged, but his jaw tightened. Left me thinking maybe I wasn't meant to stay in one place. Miriam stared at her hands. "You're not the only one who's buried something," she said quietly. They didn't speak after that. The quiet stretched long, but not cold. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Miriam didn't dream of the snow swallowing the house. She didn't see her husband's still body, or the empty road, or her sons huddled in silence. Instead, she dreamed of the firelight, and the sound of Whit's voice, as he explained the knot to Caleb, and the smell of bread baking somewhere just out of sight. When she woke, the world felt changed. Not healed, not yet, but pointed in a new direction. The next days fell into a rhythm, the kind born not from comfort, but necessity. Mornings began before light touched the windows, with the hiss of the stove and the scrape of boots across the floor. Miriam rose before the boys, boiled snow for washing, and braided her hair with fingers that still cracked at the knuckles. She learned the weight of a milk pail, learned the feel of snow under a split hoof and the patience it took to calm a spooked hen. Sister Amelia taught her how to stretch flour into biscuits and how to spot the first signs of frostbite. The work was hard but honest, and no one asked where you came from, only what you could do now. Whit didn't speak much. He spent his mornings fixing fence posts along the mission's southern edge, his afternoons tending to the sick horses others had brought in. He was careful with animals, more careful than he was with people, and Miriam watched how his whole body softened near a limping colt or a panicked dog. He never raised his voice. He rarely raised his eyes. But when he did, she felt it. One morning she found him behind the barn, sitting on a low beam, sharpening his knife. "You always quiet?" she asked, brushing snow from the hem of her coat. He looked up. The blade paused, mid-stroke. "Only when there's too much worth saying." She smiled, just a little. "That's one way to keep peace." He shrugged. "Words used to matter more. Then I learned most people use them to fill space, not to build it." Miriam leaned against the post beside him. Her coat was too thin for standing still, but she stayed anyway. "And what would you build?" He thought for a long time. "Something that doesn't tip over the first time winter comes," he said finally. They stood in silence after that, the kind that didn't need anything more. That evening the boys played near the hearth with bits of wooden string. Eli was building a tower, Caleb pretending not to watch. Miriam sat at the long table in the corner, patching a quilt. Whit came in from outside, brushing snow from his shoulders. "They're saying the roads south are clearer," he said, pulling off his gloves. "Might be wagons headed for Rawlins come Monday." Miriam nodded. "You planning to go?" He didn't answer right away. The fire cracked behind him, shadows reaching across the floor. "I was," he said, "before I stopped here." She kept sewing. "What changed?" "You." The word hung in the air, simple and unadorned. Miriam looked up. His eyes were on hers now, steady. There was no heat in the room beyond the fire, but her chest warmed anyway. Not like a rush, not like a blaze, just the slow rising of something deep and quiet. "I don't know what I have to offer," she said, voice low. "I've got 2 boys, a broken home, and nothing much left of myself." Whit stepped closer. "You're still standing." She laughed under her breath. "Some days I don't feel like it. Still counts." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a silver button, worn at the edges. "My brother gave me this when I left," he said. "Said if I ever settled down, I ought to sew it on to something I planned to keep." He held it out. "I've been carrying it for 12 years. Miriam didn't take it. "Not yet." She looked at it, then at him. "You sure?" "No," he said, "but I want to be." Behind them, Caleb laughed, reeling and guarded for the first time in weeks. Alistar toppled, and both boys fell into a heap of giggles. Miriam reached out and took the button from Whit's palm. It was warm from his coat. "You hold on to it," she said. "So no." He nodded once. "That's enough." Outside, snow fell soft as ash, blanketing the world without erasing it. The storm had passed, but its mark remained. Inside, by the fire, the boys played, the woman stitched, and the man watched, not with hunger, not with sorrow, but with the first faint trace of hope. Snow melted in slow sweeps over the next week, revealing the ground like a wound just beginning to scab. Mud came next deep, clinging stuff that sucked at boots and coated everything in a dull, rust-colored grime. The chickens complained, the horses adjusted, and the people, as always, worked through it. Miriam no longer woke startled. The boys no longer whispered in their sleep. At breakfast, they bickered like they used to, and Eli had taken to asking Whit questions without end: how to throw a rope, how to patch a saddle, whether horses ever got lonely. Whit answered them all with patience that surprised her. One morning, while Cale helped Sister Amelia boil linens for the sick, Miriam found Whit alone in the loft, sorting through tools and old tack. "You said you were leaving," she said, standing in the low doorway, arms crossed. He nodded, setting a warm bit aside. "That was the plan. You're still here." He didn't look at her. A man's allowed to change his mind. She stepped in, boots echoing on the creaking boards. "I need to know what you want." Now he did look at her slowly, steadily, like he meant it. "I want to build something that doesn't break when the weather turns." He walked toward her, not fast, not bold, just close. The loft was narrow, the air close with the smell of leather and dust. "I want to stop running." Miriam searched his face. Not for lies, for fear, but she found neither. "I can't promise it'll be what you need," she said. "Him still coming apart in places. Him not looking for someone finished," he said. "Just someone willing." She lowered her eyes. Her hands had found each other and were pulling tight, knuckles pale. "And if I say yes? If I say I want you to stay?" His voice was quiet. "Then I will." She didn't answer right away, but she didn't walk away either. And when she looked up again, there were tears in her eyes, not the kind that came from pain, but the kind that meant something old had finally loosened its grip. That evening, Whit took Caleb with him to check the outer pasture. Eli stayed behind with Sister Amelia, folding linens with clumsy determination. Miriam stood at the stove, stirring a pot of beans. Her mind wandered. She thought of the bed they'd saved and the chair they'd burned. She thought of the letter in her boot, still unread in months. And she thought of the silver button in her apron pocket, worn smooth at the edges from her thumb. When Whit returned, she met him on the steps. "You could have gone already," she said. "That wagon to Rollins." "I didn't." The sky behind him was streaked with dying gold. His face was shadowed, but his voice lost. "I want a life that's built, not borrowed." She stepped down beside him. The chill in the air pulled at her sleeves, but she didn't flinch. "Then stay," she said. "Not for rescue. Not to be rescued. Just stay." He reached into his coat and took her hand. Not rough, not eager, just sure. "I will." And it was that simple. In the weeks that followed, the boys began helping with the animals. Miriam helped Sister Amelia run the kitchen and mended what she could for the other travelers. We cleaned out the barn and started planning a new chicken coop. He said it with no grandness, just a quiet declaration like planting a seed. They buried a second button from Whit's coat beside the first under the porch beam. Not as a grave, as a beginning. Come spring, when the rivers swelled and the trees burst green again, they would move not far, just beyond the ridge. There was talk of salvaging the Lark cabin, of rebuilding what could be kept and letting the rest go. Miriam didn't know yet, but now she believed there might be something worth building again. One night, long after the boys had gone to sleep and the fire had burned low, Whit took her hand and pressed it to his chest. "No more running," he said. She rested her forehead against his. "No more waiting in the cold." Outside, the night wind carried the first scent of falling earth. And inside, in that little room by the fire, two lives battered but not broken began again. stay on the trail, subscribe and don't look back.